And joining us now here in the studio is the Sports Minister, Senator Mark Arbib. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
Do you agree with the English assessment that the future of these games is on a knife's edge?
Well, obviously there's a great deal of discussions taking place at the moment. The Commonwealth Games Federation has put out a statement talking about some of their concerns regarding some of the Commonwealth Games infrastructure and also the village. Obviously they're asking the Indian authorities to respond to that and also to make the remedial work complete the remedial work as quickly as possible. Tonight I spoke to Perry Crosswhite, who's the head of the Australian Commonwealth Games Association, had a long chat to him about preparations for the Australian team. He was actually quite upbeat about the preparations for the team and also about the work that's taking place in the village to get it ready for the Australian team.
Were you surprised that he said the Australian team had not even discussed the prospect of abandoning the Games?
Well, he has been upbeat since he arrived in Delhi, and obviously he's inspected the Games facilities and he's inspected the village, and his belief is that there is some minor work that needs to take place, but he believes it can be done prior to the team's arrival, which is on the 27th. Tomorrow, he's told me, part of the medical team arrives, so they'll start looking at some of those medical issues for the Games athletes.
What would happen if the Australians pulled out? That'd pretty much be the end of it, wouldn't it?
Well, it'd be very difficult, certainly, and there is always the potential that some teams may do that. At the moment, and this is something that I've been talking about today a great deal, the decision whether to go or not to go is a decision for athletes themselves. That is the way it is now. That is the way it has been for any large event.
You did preface that by saying at the moment. Could that change at some point?
Well, obviously, in terms of going forward, things could change. Obviously, we await reports from Delhi. The High Commission and representatives are obviously in discussions with representatives of the Indian authorities. The hope is, everyone's hope is that the Games go ahead. Many of these athletes, all of these athletes, have worked for many years to be there. So the hope that everyone has is that the Games go ahead. The government has been working with the Indian authorities since 2009 in terms of preparations, making sure we've got a safe and secure Games. We're also providing extra assistance and resources to our High Commission in India to make sure they've got the resources they need to deal with.
OK, but you just said the situation might change. Presumably what you mean by that is the official advice from the Australian government as to whether athletes should go or not might change. What circumstances might cause you to issue an active warning to athletes not to go?
Well, in terms of advice Australia provides, we provide travel advice through our travel advisories. They're the Department of Foreign Affairs trade travel advisories, and that's based on the best sources of information that Australian authorities can put together. We provide that information to all Australians who intend to travel overseas. The Games, the travel advisory for India was actually updated tonight to provide extra information in terms of a court case that's taking place in India on Friday and a decision coming down which may cause some unrest, and also to talk about some of the Games facilities. So we will constantly be advising Australians who intend to travel to the Games. What we are saying is, if you are thinking about travelling as a spectator, as an athlete, in whatever capacity to India, please read the advisories. Please make sure that you're up to date. We are urging Australians to exercise a great deal of care, obviously in caution, when they're over there.
Well, you are. I mean, two tourists were shot near a mosque the other day. The local media in India have been able to breach Games security with apparent ease, and that's caused immense embarrassment. The Australian Travel Advisory says there's a high risk of a terrorist attack in New Delhi. How serious is that threat?
Well, there has been, and I think this is in the advisory as well, there's been something like 12 incidents, terrorist incidents, since 2000 in Delhi. So obviously the potential is there, and that's in the advisories, and we haven't played that down. We've made sure that any Australians who are travelling are aware of that advice, and it's up front. At the same time as that, the Australian government has been working with Indian authorities in terms of on the security arrangements. We are in close contact with the Commonwealth Games counterparts, with security agencies from the United Kingdom, from Canada, from New Zealand, and also from the United States. So we are working very hard to ensure that our athletes are protected, that those travelling to the Games are protected. The number one focus, the number one priority for the Australian government is, of course, the safety and security of our Australians travelling overseas.
If you had a teenager yourself competing in these Games, would you want them to go?
Well, Tony, that is a decision that every individual has to make. I'm travelling to the Games, and I've taken the time to read the advisory. And
would you take your kids?
Well, Tony, I'm going to the Games. I'm going as a government's representative, and I've read the advisory. In terms of each individual, and I know and I understand that will be many parents who are sending teenagers to the game, and I understand they'll be concerned about that. And what I'd be advising them is the same I'd advise anybody. Read the advisories, make sure you take the time, because we are urging anyone travelling to exercise extreme care. The other thing is, talking to the Australian team, there will be some very strict rules in place for Australian athletes when they're over in India in terms of travel restrictions, outside game facilities, and also outside the security cordon.
Let me put this to you. We've been very lucky so far, it seems to me. Can you imagine how many people would have died, very likely, or been seriously injured if that walkway had collapsed when it was full of people heading to the stadium?
Well, the walkway was still, but the information I've received, and obviously we're requesting further information from our High Commission, the information I have received so far is that walkway was still under construction at the time, hadn't been certified or no certificate had been provided. It was still being constructed, and those people injured were obviously construction workers, and that is something that the government is extremely concerned about, and today officials from the Australian High Commission are making representations about that very issue.
Now, part of a roof has fallen down in inside one of the venues. That's on top of these problems in the athletes' village and many other problems apparently right across a series of venues. I mean, how serious? What if these shoddy manufacturing, if the shoddy engineering is evident right through and including in the stadiums? Won't you want engineering checks in every one of those places, on walkways, on anything that's going to hold lots of people, like stadiums with tiered seating and so on?
Well, obviously the collapse of the walkway was concerning, and that is why the Australian government has asked for information from Indian authorities through our High Commission. But my understanding is the High Commission has been making representations on those issues regularly with Indian authorities, and we're going to continue to do that, and we'll be assessing information as it comes in.
What about the ceiling that just fell down this evening?
So we've only just received basic information on that. The Indian authorities are saying it is a minor issue. Obviously, again, the High Commission will be seeking information from Indian authorities and also from the Commonwealth Games Federation. My understanding is that on the 7th of September, the Indian authorities provided certificates of completion to the Commonwealth Games Federation for all games facilities, and those facilities were viewed from the Commonwealth Games Federation as being safe.
Now, were you reassured, however, by the Indian officials who are being sent out to reassure us, one of whom says a lot of these complaints are actually due to cultural differences, that Westerners have different standards?
Well, I think there is always, before big events, there is always issues. And even before the Sydney Olympics, there was talk about the Sydney Olympics being a complete schmozzle, and in the end it was proved incorrect. The Indian authorities, we know, are working very hard. We know the Indian security forces and the government is working very hard to make sure there's a safe and secure games, and the Australian government is working very closely with them to make sure that happens.
The Asian Age newspaper has blamed inept, inefficient and corrupt administrators for the problems. I mean, do you think that's right? And if it's right, that ineptness could be right through the entire system? Well,
all I can say on that is we've got our officials in New Delhi talking to the Indian government at the same time. Certificates were provided by Indian authorities to the Commonwealth Games Federation. Again, though, the Commonwealth Games Federation is seeking more information and also seeking that remedial work is done, and obviously we'll be following that up closely with them and also keeping in contact with the Australian Commonwealth Games Association.
Okay, final question. If one of the major countries like England, for example, were to pull out, would that sway the government's position, or would the government's position remain exactly the same, that it's up to individual athletes and, in fact, the Games organisers?
Well, in terms of whether to attend the Games or not, that is up to individual athletes. Tony, if you wanted to go to the Games, if you wanted to go overseas, I can only give you advice. I can't stop you from going. So we'll provide the most up-to-date advice we can to Australians intending to go to the Games, considering going to the Games. What I'd say is make sure, if you are intending to go, that you register with smarttraveller.gov.au, you get the bulletins, you get the updates, and make sure you read them thoroughly because there are some security concerns.
Mark Arbib, we'll have to leave you there. Well, thank you very much for coming to talk to us tonight.